For my Course 5 COETAIL final project, I decided to redesign a traditional self-portrait lesson into a lesson that allows students to use 21st century skills. I wanted my students to create an original artwork, problem solve, collaborate, communicate, and publicly exhibit a project of genuine value that has a transformative effect on the students, their relationship to learning, and the world around them. The students created a self-portrait out of descriptive words, phrases, or sentences that tells the viewer more about the individual's identity. The students used Photoshop to create their self-portraits. Once the portraits were complete, we posted the artwork on our Google Plus community that provides an authentic worldwide audience. We then practiced art criticism skills such as analyzing and critiquing artwork and how to leave a constructive and encouraging comment for others, which is an important digital citizenship skill. This project meets the RIS 9 through 12 visual arts standards, whereas students understand and apply media, techniques, and processes related to the visual arts. Students know how to use structures and functions of art, they understand the visual arts in relation to history and culture, and understand the characteristics and merits of one's own artwork and the artwork of others. It also meets the ISTE's net standards of creativity and innovation, communication and collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making, and digital citizenship. The tools I used for this project are Prezi, Google Docs, Google Plus Community, Edmodo, Photoshop, Google Art Project, and YouTube tutorials. Prezi was a presentation platform I used to introduce self-portraits in micrography. I created a project brief and rubrics in Google Docs that outline the assignments, requirements, and expectations for the project. Google Plus Community is the social media forum we use to showcase the students' work, and it is here that we posted the completed portraits and critiqued each other's work. Edmodo is the social learning platform I use to post assignments and stay connected with my students. Google Art Project is an online platform which the public can access high-resolution images of artwork from various international art museums. We use Photoshop as our photo editing software to create the self-portraits, and I also added YouTube Photoshop tutorials to my Edmodo site so that the students could re-watch and work at their own pace. To introduce this lesson, I began by writing the word identity on the board and asked the students to brainstorm its meaning. I then asked each student to create a list of at least 20 words that describe themselves. Then I divided the class into smaller groups of 3 and asked the students to share their list with each other and then discuss the following questions. What 3 words describe you? Why do they accurately describe you? What 3 words would your family and friends use to describe you? And how accurate are those? After much discussion, it was interesting to find out that the students found it much harder to describe themselves than to describe someone else. After we defined identity and considered who we were, we discussed how artists could visually show their identity. We discussed how portraits can represent individuals in many ways. A portrait can be a literal representation or it can be symbolic. With this in mind, I then introduced the students to Google Art Project, where we took a virtual tour inside the National Museum of Art and the J. Paul Getty Museum to look at various examples of portraits and to see how artists portray themselves to others. After exploring portraits, the next step in the process was to introduce micrography, also known as microcalligraphy, which was developed in the 9th century, where artwork is created from text that forms an image when viewed at a distance, creating an interplay between the text and image. Here I showed the students a Prezi I created about micrography. It introduced the history of micrography, how it is used today in advertising, graphic design, and art, and I also introduced the project and showed examples of typographical portraits for inspiration. The next step was to introduce the students to Photoshop. Most of the students in the class had little to no experience with the program, so I had to give them an overview of the tools and teach them how to do basic skills such as creating layers, making a selection, adding text, and using the pen tool. I walked them through creating a new document and bringing their selfies into Photoshop. I then showed them how to apply text to a path with the pen tool and also provided Photoshop tutorials on YouTube so that the students could always go back and watch the tutorials and move at their own pace. As you can see, the final outcome was pretty successful. The students were able to use technology to create a unique work of art, share it with others, and provide constructive criticism and praise to help their peers improve. However, there were some challenges. The main challenge I had with this project was making sure all the students had Photoshop. One solution was to take all of the students to the middle school computer lab. However, I preferred to work in my own classroom. So those students who did not already have Photoshop were asked to sign up for an online trial version of Photoshop Creative Cloud. At first this was a bit cumbersome because download time took very long. So some students were ready to start while others weren't. As I reflect on this lesson, I am pretty satisfied with the overall outcome. However, if I were to do this project again, I would introduce the concept of value and tone to create more depth in the portraits. Thinking about the implementation of this project in regards to the SAMR model, I would say that it is between modification and striving towards redefinition. Each self-portrait was very unique and showed the students' understanding of working with layers and the pen tool and other basic computer skills. And I could tell that the students were very proud of their work as they posted it onto the Google community and enjoyed commenting and receiving comments on their work. However, I am not sure that it was shared outside of the school community. Even though this project could have been done without technology, technology made this project more efficient, authentic, and helped to extend this project into the 21st century.
So for this art project, I learned how to make a micrography, and there are many things that I've learned to use when I'm doing this project, like for example Photoshop, which is the main program we use to make this, and which is also the most difficult part for me because I'm not really used to using Photoshop. It was one of my first time, so it was quite hard for me to know how to use the tools and how to make things right. For example, the pen tool and the text tool and how to use them together to make the words into a curve instead of a line. So my favorite part was actually when I saved the final product as a JPEG, because I felt that I just made something that I didn't thought I could have done before. So I think I feel satisfied with my final project because since it's one of my first time doing projects on Photoshop, it was quite good. And doing the brainstorming part, it helped me learn more about my identity because I had to come up with 20 words which describes me. Thank you.
So my micrography project was just done a week ago, and it was really amazing to work on something new like that. And the part that I enjoyed the most doing was actually searching for words that describe myself. For example, I asked my friends also to describe what actually they feel is a good word to represent me. So that was pretty interesting. And the things that I learned was I learned many things, but the most important one that I would really use in my life would be Photoshop skills. I didn't know any Photoshop skills before that. I just had it in my computer, but I didn't know what to do with it. So that was a pretty good skill to learn. And if the artwork would help think about my identity, because it actually makes me think what are the good qualities of me rather than always judging myself negatively. So that's what people do in general, always judge themselves negatively. So I think this was a good project to make me look at myself positively. Thank you.